Money in the Roman Empire was not merely metal currency, but a system of trust that bound citizens, soldiers, and provinces together across vast imperial distances. Before widespread monetization, Roman wealth depended on land ownership, tribute payments, and conquest, but imperial growth demanded a reliable system to measure value consistently. Coins transformed Roman administration by allowing soldiers to receive standardized pay, provinces to remit taxes efficiently, and merchants to trade confidently across borders. Roman currency extended imperial authority into daily life, allowing people who never saw the emperor to experience power through coins bearing his image. This monetary system worked only through discipline, requiring stable minting, controlled supply, and confidence that today's coin would retain value tomorrow. As Rome's dependence on money deepened, its economy grew efficient yet fragile, because once trust weakened, currency failure threatened every imperial system simultaneously. The denarius transformed Roman power by turning silver into trust, allowing Rome to control trade, taxation, and armies across continents through a single shared currency. Introduced during the Republic, the denarius standardized transactions, allowing soldiers, merchants, and tax officials to operate under one stable monetary system. From Gaul to Syria, the same silver coins circulated freely, allowing distant provinces to trade efficiently despite never sharing language, culture, or local governance. The denarius worked because its silver purity remained consistent, creating confidence that encouraged trade, specialization, and long-term economic planning across the empire. Rome's wealth came not from storing silver, but from constant circulation, keeping money moving through armies, cities, trade routes, and taxation systems. Yet rising costs tempted Rome to alter the coin, turning the denarius from a source of stability into a future amplifier of crisis. When Roman expansion slowed, imperial expenses kept rising, transforming survival itself into a financial burden that conquest alone could no longer offset. Rome's borders stretched thousands of kilometers, requiring constant defense by permanent armies rather than temporary forces raised only during wartime. Soldiers now expected steady wages, pensions, and land grants, turning military service into a lifelong financial commitment for the Roman state. Infrastructure that once fueled growth now demanded constant maintenance, as roads, aqueducts, and cities aged across the vast imperial landscape. Without new conquests, fresh taxes and precious metals slowed, exposing an economy designed for expansion, not long-term financial equilibrium. Facing unrest from higher taxes and danger from military cuts, emperors chose financial shortcuts that quietly transferred pressure onto Rome's currency. Rome subtly reduced the silver content of the denarius, maintaining its face value, temporarily easing budget pressures while sowing the seeds of gradual financial instability. To most Romans, the denarius appeared unchanged, but its silver content slowly decreased, allowing more coins to be minted from the same amount of precious metal. Initially, markets adjusted slowly, and confidence in currency remained high, giving Rome an illusion of control while quietly undermining trust across the empire. Debasement became addictive. Once initiated, repeating the practice was easier, gradually reducing silver content, increasing prices, and pressuring soldiers and civilians alike. Over decades, silver content declined significantly, merchants raised prices, and soldiers demanded higher pay, eroding trust gradually and silently across the empire. The denarius circulated, but its meaning shifted. Once a symbol of stability, it now reflected imperial desperation, silently taxing everyone through gradual inflation and eroding faith. Inflation hit daily life, raising food prices and essentials, especially in Rome and port cities reliant on grain imports, creating financial strain for common citizens. Wages failed to match rising costs. Ordinary Romans saw their purchasing power shrink, feeling poorer, while coins circulated more abundantly across urban and rural markets. Contracts became difficult to enforce, long-term planning declined, and merchants raised prices defensively, accelerating inflation, while economic unpredictability unsettled citizens and slowed trade across the empire. Wealthier elites protected themselves by acquiring land and tangible assets, leaving ordinary citizens to bear the invisible tax of inflation, deepening societal inequality. People hoarded goods instead of money, trade slowed, economic confidence waned, and the empire's financial foundation weakened, leaving it vulnerable to future war, plague, and political chaos. Rome had not collapsed, but resilience was weakened. Inflation quietly eroded trust in money, which once unified the empire, preparing the stage for crises to come. The Roman army sustained imperial stability but became a financial burden, as debased coins diminished pay, generating discontent and political tension among legions stationed across vast borders. To maintain loyalty, emperors repeatedly raised soldiers' wages and distributed bonuses, which increased coin production and debasement, fueling a dangerous feedback loop undermining Rome's fiscal health. Soldiers' growing economic influence became politically perilous. Failure to pay adequately could trigger mutiny, turning Rome's disciplined army into a destabilizing force threatening the empire's authority. Military spending consumed ever-growing revenue, leaving less for infrastructure and civilian needs, shifting the army's role from protecting prosperity to demanding it directly from Rome's finances. Rome's reliance on cash for loyalty replaced honor and tradition. Soldiers' faith in currency became essential. When money faltered, political and military authority faltered as well. The army that once protected Rome now exposed its fragility. Financial weakness translated into political instability, making the empire's survival dependent on maintaining faith in debased money. As the denarius weakened, Rome increasingly relied on taxation to offset fiscal shortfalls, placing heavier burdens on landowners, farmers, and urban citizens across the sprawling empire. Taxes grew not only in size but intensity, with frequent assessments, mandatory grain deliveries, and inflated levies, placing immense pressure on small producers and urban communities. Harsher tax collection deepened social inequality. Elites manipulated systems for personal advantage, while small landholders faced abandonment, poverty, or dependence on powerful patrons to survive. Economic mobility declined. Taxation punished visibility and productivity, encouraging citizens to hide wealth, avoid innovation, and adopt defensive strategies rather than contributing to dynamic economic growth. Rome collected revenue but sacrificed long-term vitality. Taxation shifted from governance to extraction, weakening the social contract and eroding citizens' loyalty while maintaining apparent fiscal stability. Civilian strain created quiet discontent. The empire's stability relied increasingly on extraction, laying the groundwork for future unrest and illustrating the fragility of Rome's monetary system. Inflation and financial instability disrupted Roman trade networks that once operated efficiently, making consistent pricing difficult and increasing uncertainty for merchants across interconnected provincial markets. Long-distance trade became increasingly risky as fluctuating currency values undermined contracts, discouraging merchants from transporting goods across vast imperial distances once safely integrated. As trust declined, some regions reverted to barter or localized exchange, weakening economic integration and reversing centuries of monetary coordination across the Roman Mediterranean world. Although roads and ports still existed, declining confidence fractured provincial economies, isolating cities dependent on imports and creating shortages that destabilized urban populations. Regional price disparities increased dramatically, weakening Rome's ability to shift resources efficiently during crises and turning interdependence from strength into systemic vulnerability. Rome's economy remained vast but no longer cohesive, as fragmentation replaced integration, transforming the once unified Mediterranean system into smaller, inefficient, and vulnerable regional markets. Facing mounting instability, Roman authorities imposed direct control over prices, wages, and production, attempting to stabilize the economy through centralized regulation rather than market mechanisms. Price edicts attempted to freeze inflation, while professions were regulated and made hereditary, binding individuals permanently to occupations deemed essential for state survival. These controls reduced economic flexibility, preventing markets from responding naturally to supply and demand, causing shortages, inefficiencies, and growing reliance on informal black markets. Enforcement demanded expanding bureaucracy and coercion, increasing state expenses while discouraging initiative. As fear replaced incentives and survival became the primary economic motivation, the state shifted from facilitating prosperity to enforcing compliance, embedding itself deeply into daily economic life as controller rather than partner within the imperial system. Although these measures delayed collapse, they locked Rome into stagnation, preserving fragile stability while sacrificing growth, innovation, and the dynamism that once powered imperial wealth. Rome did not fall from poverty, but from systems unable to sustain immense wealth, as debasement, inflation, and rising costs quietly weakened economic foundations. Currency debasement, inflation, military spending, and excessive control eroded trust, the most valuable economic resource, without which even powerful empires become unstable. Rome's experience reveals a timeless lesson. Power built on money demands discipline, transparency, and restraint, not shortcuts that trade future stability for immediate relief. Although Rome survived financial strain for centuries, resilience faded as coordination weakened, adaptability declined, and complexity outpaced the empire's ability to respond effectively. The empire remained vast in appearance yet fragile in function, proving that wealth alone cannot replace trust, coordination, and sustainable economic design. If this story reshaped how you view money and power, subscribe for more lessons connecting ancient empires to modern systems, because history rarely repeats, but always rhymes.